Hello YouTube and welcome to SciPrime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily cover Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. And welcome back to my Starfinder Playtest series where I discuss the new, as of the posting of this video, Starfinder 2nd Edition Playtest. As a reminder, Starfinder 2nd Edition uses the rules for Pathfinder 2nd Edition with a few minor tweaks, and that's actually what I discussed in my first video. But I know what you're all here for. You want to know about the classes. I actually covered the classes, or at least their broad strokes, in a previous video which should be appearing on screen now. That was made before the Starfinder 2nd Edition playtest came out, so it focused on the themes and concepts of each class. Today I want to focus on the mechanics. Now, I can't go over all the class abilities, and certainly not each class feat, so instead today we'll focus on a few things. Firstly, the class basics, which some people call the class chassis. Then I'll discuss the core class abilities, the class path, sometimes called the subclass, and a few standout abilities, and then some final thoughts. So let's get started. Before I get started, real quick, I'm going to do some comparisons between the Starfinder 2nd Edition classes and the Pathfinder 2nd Edition classes. I feel that this is a valid comparison because of this Paizo statement. In summary, Paizo wants you to be able to play Pathfinder 2e classes in Starfinder 2e games, and so it's reasonable to assume that the two should be on the same power level. The first class in the playtest is the Envoy. Envoys are a non-spellcasting class that gives allies bonuses through advice and good leadership. For their base chassis, they are a charisma-based martial class that gets 8 HP per level, and they have training and get up to master in light armor, simple weapons, and martial weapons. They start with expert in reflex and will saving throws, but are only trained in perception and fortitude. The Envoy generally has 4 main things going for them: directives, asset, their good skills, and their leadership style, which is their subclass. The biggest thing is their directives. Directives are a new type of action where the Envoy can give out orders or suggestions to their friends. This comes with a bonus, and then if the Envoy follows their own advice, their allies, and sometimes themselves, get a better bonus. They start out with the directive Get 'em, which reduces an enemy's defenses. If the Envoy then attacks that enemy, the Envoy and their allies do more damage to that enemy. They get more directives as they level up, and can get even more directives as class feats. I'm fond of the Take 'em Alive directive, which negates the penalty for making non-lethal attacks for you and your allies, for those of you who don't want to be a party of murder hobos. Their second ability is called Asset, and honestly, it's kinda boring. An Envoy can study someone, and if they do, they get some bonuses on skills to interact with them, and some bonuses upon rolling initiative if their asset is in that fight. Envoys are also the Starfinder skill monkey. Their class starts with 8 plus their intelligence modifier number of skills, and they get a skill increase every level starting at level 2. Lastly, at level 3 they get a free temporary skill feat that they can swap out at the start of the day. Note that this skill feat can be something like multilingual, which can get you extra languages, or the additional lore skill feat. On an alien planet? No problem, you learn their language in a day, but only for a day. Stranded on the deserts of Akaton? No problem, your 15th level Envoy just became legendary in Deserts of Akaton lore. You can even get more temporary skill feats as you level up. The class paths, commonly deemed subclasses by the community, are called leadership styles for the Envoy, and they represent what kind of leader you are. Each leadership style gives you a training in a skill, a bonus, and something special at level 6 called Acts of Leadership. This Acts of Leadership lists some actions you can take. If you take one of these actions after issuing a directive, your friends gain the same bonus as if you had followed your own advice from the directive. I know that can be a bit hard to follow, so here's a quick example. Like I said earlier, the Get 'em directive gives an enemy a penalty to defenses. If you then attack the enemy, everyone gets a bonus to damage against them. But if a level 6 Envoy with the From the Front leadership style uses Get 'em and then raises a shield, all their allies do bonus damage as if the Envoy had attacked the enemy. It's a bit confusing, but that's what each level 6 Envoy ability gets you. Speaking of from the front, that Envoy is the melee-focused one. They gain training in athletics and also gain training in medium armor that scales up with their light armor training. Their acts of leadership are to raise a shield or to take a move action such as stepping while within an enemy's reach. From the shadows is the sneaky leadership style, and it gives you stealth, gives you assurance and stealth, and their acts of leadership are to hide, sneak, or take cover. Guns Blazing is the shooting-focused style, and it gives you acrobatics and the general feat Incredible Initiative. Their acts of leadership are to attack with a multiple attack penalty, make an area of effect attack, or reload an empty ranged weapon. That's important. You can't just keep reloading full ranged weapons to get your acts of leadership. In the Spotlight is the Socialite style. It gives you performance, the impressive performance skill feat, and the acts of leadership are to perform or to issue another different directive. Hotshot is the piloting style. It gives you piloting, the express driver skill feat, and the acts of leadership are all driving themed. This one is probably the weakest, as most of the time combats are not going to involve driving vehicles. Infosphere Director is the social media computers style. It gives you training in computers, the digital diversion skill feat, and the acts of leadership are to use digital diversion to create a diversion or to recall knowledge. That's pretty good. Lastly, Through Desperate Times is the medicine-based one. It gives you training in medicine, the battle medicine skill feat, and the acts of leadership are to use first aid, battle medicine, or to use a healing item on someone. That one could go really well if you grabbed the alchemist dedication. Overall thoughts? I like the Envoy. Solid skills, and there's enough here to support a variety of playstyles from frontline fighter to sniper to field medic. Solid class, and nothing stood out as problematic. Seems balanced. Next up is the Mystic, and their class chassis is really good. A Mystic has an epiphany about a fundamental force of the universe that gives them their spellcasting. They are a full, wisdom-based, spontaneous spellcaster with 8 HP per level, and are trained in light armor and simple weapons, eventually progressing up to expert. Most interestingly, they get up to 4 spells per spell rank, which kind of puts them as one of the best spellcasters. They're like a bard if a bard had an extra spell rank instead of martial weapon training. Like most spellcasters, they start off expert in will and trained in fortitude and reflex. The Mystic has 3 main things going for them, but they are all kind of related. They have their connection, their vitality network, and their Mystic Bond. Mystic Bond is the easiest to discuss because it's pretty simple. During daily preparations, you can designate up to 10 creatures, plus yourself, to be bonded. By itself, this bond just lets you know the general state of those bonded to you, where they are in relation to you, how far away they are, and if they are conscious, unconscious, dying, or dead. Importantly, though, it is the basis for several other abilities. For example, at level 3, everyone in your network gains the benefits of knowing where each other are and how they are doing, not just you knowing about them. Next up is your connection, which is your subclass. Your connection represents that epiphany that gave you spellcasting. It doesn't have to be religious in nature, but it can be. Your connection determines what tradition of magic you use, either occult, primal, or divine. It also gives you a bunch of stuff that we'll discuss in a minute. The last major thing Mystics get is their vitality network. You see, a Mystic has a pool of hit points that they can transfer to themselves or to anyone within 60 feet if they are in the Mystic's vitality network. The network regains 4 HP per round of combat, and outside of combat, if the Mystic refocuses, they regain double their level plus their wisdom modifier hit points to the network. So this is some really solid, renewable healing, but it comes with a caveat that you can only do it to the people in network. Of course, this is on top of any healing spells you might have. I should point out that there are feats and spells you can take that take points out of your vitality network to do other stuff, not just heal, so do remember that. Circling back to connections for a second, they are pretty wild. Each connection gives you spellcasting in one tradition and a skill, though the skill is not necessarily your spellcasting tradition skill. For example, the Shadow connection makes you trained in stealth, seems appropriate, but that means you could make a Shadow Mystic who doesn't know the religion skill. Connections also give you some extra spells known, but the big thing is that they have a harmony. For all but one of the connections, your harmony gives you a bonus when you transfer hit points from your vitality network. For the healing connection, your harmony boosts your healing spells. Each connection gives you a series of epiphanies as you level up. You start with the first one at level 1 and you automatically gain more the higher level you get. These epiphanies are a series of focus spells and bonus abilities like the ability to teleport once around to a shadowed area. I won't go over each of the connections in detail as we'd be here all day if I read out each focus spell, but real quick, Akashic is the only occult spellcasting connection and it gives you the occult skill. It represents a connection to the supernatural repository of all knowledge. The Harmony ability is that if you transfer vitality, the person that got the hit points can, as a free action, make a recall knowledge check, though this check doesn't trigger any special abilities they may have when recalling knowledge. Elemental is a primal connection and it gives you the nature skill. It represents an understanding of the elemental planes and forces of nature. Their harmony is that if you transfer vitality, that person's next strike made before the end of their next turn does 1d4 persistent damage of a type based on the element you choose. There's a bit more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. Healing is the divine connection that gives you the medicine skill. Surprise, surprise, it represents a connection to life and the ways of fostering it. Their Harmony ability is twofold. First of all, it lets you heal creatures with vitality spells, even if they have void healing. Secondly, if you use a spell to heal someone and heal them in excess of their maximum hit points, some of those hit points are put back into your vitality network, so that's great. Oh, side note, the first Epiphany focus spell is basically just the heal spell, only it heals 6 instead of 8 HP per spell rank, but remember, it's a focus spell so you can get it back by refocusing. Rhythm is a primal connection that grants the performance skill. It's the connection that revolves around music, nature, the so-called Song of the Spheres. Its harmony is to extend the effects of your Mystic Focus spell by a round, or to cast a one-action Mystic Focus spell as a free action if you don't have any Mystic Focus spells currently going. The last connection is Shadow, which is divine. For some reason, I would have thought it would be occult. Anyway, it grants the stealth skill, obviously. The harmony darkens the area around the target for one round, making the area dim light. The target can use this dim light to hide, but I'm not sure if it also means that they have trouble seeing anyone else if they don't have low light or dark vision. Not sure about the efficacy of this one. The Mystic seems solid, like really solid. 8 HP per level, light armor, and 4 spells per spell rank seems really good. Add to that their class abilities, and it seems like they kinda outpace the Sorcerer. Sure, the Sorcerer has some abilities like Sorcerer's Potency, but I don't know, I think the Mystic just kinda beats them hands down. Fellow YouTuber Swing Ripper did a video on this where he mostly came to the same conclusion. Check out the link in the description below. Moving on to Operative, and here is where we hit our first major stumbling block, I think, because the Operative has some conspicuously strong options that I can see being very disruptive. But before we get to that, the Operative is a lightly armored, fast assassin type character. They are a dexterity-based martial class with 8 HP per level. They start with training in light armor and simple and martial weapons. However, they get expert in simple and martial guns and trained in advanced guns. What's a gun? Well, according to Starfinder, it's a ranged weapon with the tech or analog trait, so any ranged weapon? Now, they start off at expert in only one saving throw, reflex, and are trained in the others, which is odd, I think. Marks them as the only non-spellcaster to start off with expert in only one saving throw, I believe. They also start off as expert in perception. Now, I want to talk about their proficiency with weapons because it does not follow any other class chassis. They may be proficient in simple and martial weapons, but they only get up to expert in them, and that's at level 13. This is in contrast to every other martial character who gets up to at least expert at 5 and master at 13. Now, the Operative's proficiency with simple and martial guns increases to master at 5 and legendary at 13, but their weapon proficiency caps out at expert for non-gun weapons. This is odd. I can see what Paizo is trying to do to give the Operative more power but limiting other abilities. More about this in my final thoughts at the end of the class. An Operative really only has 2 things going for them, their aim action and their Operative specialization, which is their subclass. They have a few other minor abilities, but they're not really worth talking about. Aim is a bit of an odd action. When an Operative aims at someone, they mark them. When an enemy is marked, all the operative's gun attacks against that person until the end of the turn deal extra damage, starting with 1d4 extra damage and scaling up to 4d4 at level 17. Aim also helps the operative counter cover. The other ability is the subclass of the operative called the operative specialization. Each specialization gives you a skill, a free skill feat for that skill that you get to choose, and something called an exploit, which is a special bonus. They also get an enhanced exploit, which is another bonus at level 9. The ghost specialization isn't about stealth, but deceit, blending into a crowd or infiltrating in plain sight, that sort of thing. Their skill is deception, and their exploit allows them to assassinate people, hitting them to slow them if their target fails to notice them as a threat. The infiltrator is the sabotaging-based operative, and their skill is computers. Their exploit lets them hack technology-based items or robots and can cause those things to glitch out. Skirmisher is the close quarters gunslinger. Their skill is acrobatics, and their exploit says they don't trigger certain reactions when firing into melee, reactions like reactive strike. They also gain the hair trigger operative feat, which we will talk about in a second. Sniper is the sneaking-based sniping operative. They are the ones who use stealth, and they can ignore the volley trait on guns. They also gain a free bonus operative class feat from a list of 2 options. Striker is the melee operative. Athletics is their skill, and their exploit is a bit complicated. They lose expert proficiency in martial guns and instead gain expert proficiency in simple and martial one-handed melee weapons with the agile trait, along with unarmed strikes. In addition, their proficiency with those melee weapons increases at the same rate as other operatives increase their proficiency with martial guns. Also, they can use many operative class abilities and feats with those simple and martial agile melee weapons. It's a bit confusing. Just think of it as trading in their abilities with martial guns for the same abilities with simple and martial one-handed melee agile weapons. Finally, they can choose to be a strength-based operative instead of a dexterity-based operative, and they get the ability to kinda follow after someone if that person is their mark and moves away from them. Note that I think the operative striker is supposed to be able to do all their operative stuff with unarmed strikes, but that is not technically how it is worded. So now we move on to the elephant in the room, the operative feat Hair Trigger. This feat is, well, it basically gives you reactive strike at range. Enemy tries to move, shoot them. Enemy tries to shoot you, shoot them. Enemy tries to cast a spell, shoot them. Enemy tries to draw their weapon, shoot them. And if you crit against a manipulate action, you disrupt that action. And remember, you get up to legendary with your weapon. This is a 2nd level feat, and assuming the operative works like every other class in the game, any class can pick the operative archetype and get this feat at level 4. I think this is really good. Possibly to the point of being game-breaking. Now, I don't know for sure, I have not played it, but hear me out. Enemies with this ability show up in the Outlaws of Alkenstar adventure path, and pretty much everyone I ever talked to hated these enemies. They were universally panned as far as I can tell, and that was when the guns had to be reloaded every shot. Giving this to someone who can attack a lot before reloading is just silly. And if you don't think this ability is maybe a bit too powerful, then ask yourself, how would you feel if you went up against a group of 4 NPCs? You start off from 50 feet away and decide to cast the fireball spell on them, and they all respond by shooting you with their sniper rifles with extremely high accuracy and crit chances, and remember, if any of them crit you, you lose your spell. Because remember, if you can get this ability, so can an enemy NPC. In fact, as I've shown you, they have. I think the operative is just way too overpowered. There are even things I didn't mention, like them getting the ability to make their multiple attack penalty -3, -6 like a flurry ranger on top of their high accuracy and extra damage dice. Or the fact that there's an exploit with them reloading with their mobile reload class feature, which I didn't even mention. Listen, there was a joke amongst my gaming group during Starfinder 1st edition that the operative was the best class and that every party should just be all operatives and one healer. I do not want that to be the reality of Starfinder 2. The class is just straight up better than a gunslinger in almost every way. And sure, they are limited in some abilities, like only getting up to expert in melee weapons, but that just makes them really strong and pigeonholed. It doesn't really solve the problem of them being too strong. As I write the script right now, Swing Ripper, again a far more successful YouTuber than I am, put out a similar video. I just think the legendary proficiency with guns, plus the extra damage dice, plus the ability to shoot someone as a reactive strike, plus the eventual ability to have the accuracy of a flurry ranger is just way too much. As a final thought, I will leave you with this. My friend played a level 5 operative during a playtest at Gen Con 2024, and he, as a Munchkin power gamer, thought the class was too good, and he forgot to use hair trigger the entire time. The next class up is Salarian, a warrior who channels the power of stars into weapons to use on their enemies. Despite their supernatural flavor, they are a strength-based martial class that gets 10 HP per level. They have training in simple and martial weapons, light and medium armor, and get up to master proficiency in those. They do get up to legendary proficiency with one weapon at level 19, but we'll get to that. They start out expert in reflex and will and perception and are trained in fortitude. Salarians have 3 main abilities, but again they're all related. Stellar Attunement, Solar Manifestations, and a Stellar Arrangement, that last one being their subclass. Stellar Attunement is a bit tricky. During combat you can choose to be embodying or attuned to the light or gravity that a star produces. If you choose light, you are photon attuned, gravity is graviton attuned. You can also get unattuned, which means you aren't channeling the power of the stars. On its own, photon and graviton attunement don't do anything. However, other abilities key off of you being in those different modes. Salarians can also spend an action to reattune to their favorite mode, which is determined by their subclass, or gain an attunement if you are somehow unattuned. Actions with the disharmony trait, like the one provided by the Shattering Impact feat, make you unattuned. Couple more things. There are actions with the cycle trait that flip you from photon to graviton attuned or vice versa. Also, normally you are unattuned in exploration mode, but you can take an exploration activity to keep up an attunement. This is useful for things like Defy Gravity, which lets you fly as long as you are graviton attuned. It also lets you start combat in an attunement if you wanted to start in a mode other than your favorite attunement. The second ability Salarians get is called Solar Manifestation. Basically, when you roll initiative, you automatically bring out 3 things. A solar flare, which doesn't take up a hand and is a floating orb that you can shoot energy beams from. A solar nimbus, which basically just gives you a reaction if someone hits you. And a solar weapon. Your solar weapon takes up 1 hand, can look like anything you want, and does piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning damage, your choice. It also gains 2 traits from this list of traits, your choice, and you can trade in both of those traits if you want the reach trait instead. Also, it has the weapon category of one of these weapons. You can also spend 10 minutes meditating to change up the properties and look of your solar weapon. Lastly, you get different bonuses to all of these abilities depending on if you are in photon or graviton attunement. The final thing is your subclass called Stellar Arrangement. Each arrangement gives you training in a skill from a list of 2. It also dictates what your favorite attunement is, and it gives you some unique abilities at level 1, 9, and 15. Balanced is the, attunement of balance between photon and graviton. You don't have a favorite attunement and can choose either each time you want to attune. It gives you either the medicine or society skills. The level 1 ability lets you hit someone twice, once with your flare and once with your weapon, and each time you hit, you cycle, but if you fail to hit both times, you become unattuned. Degradant is the arrangement where you favor graviton attunement. It gives you the deception or intimidation skill, and at level 1 the revelation is black hole. It lets you do damage to an area and pull people closer to you. It also lets you target individuals so you can choose not to hurt your friends. Radiant is the arrangement favoring photon mode, and its skills are crafting or diplomacy. Its level 1 revelation lets you explode into a fireball, dealing fire damage to all of those around you. So there's a lot to like about the Salarian, but I think they might be a tad bit undertuned. First of all, they get up to legendary only in their solar weapon, and that's not until level 19. That's only their solar weapon, not their solar flare. And speaking of their solar flare, it seems that there is no way to improve its accuracy. There are magical items you can get to improve the accuracy of your solar weapon, but not your flare. Also, the flare just has garbage range, especially in graviton mode. And the Salarian doesn't get legendary in anything else except skills. Like, the operative gets to legendary in all simple and martial guns at 13, the mystic gets to legendary in spellcasting, the envoy gets legendary in all will saves. The salarian gets to legendary only in their one weapon, meaning you can't really even build a solar flare based salarian. Seems, I don't know, unnecessarily pigeonholed and a bit underpowered. Don't get me wrong, they can do some strong damage and have a lot of versatility, and they can't be disarmed, all of which is great, but next to a striker operative it seems, well, I'll just say they could use a small buff. Also, first edition Salarians had some gravity-based telekinesis powers, and I didn't see any of those in the playtest. I had a friend who made an entire Salarian based around gravity telekinesis control in first edition, and it'd be nice to see it as an option. Okay, wow, I swear I did not do this on purpose. It took me several days to write the script, and in that time, Swing Ripper came out with 3 videos where his thoughts echoed my thoughts. So he says exactly what I was saying with the Salarian too. Go check out his video. I swear this was not on purpose. I'm not stealing his ideas. We just came to the same conclusions and he got them out first. Moving on to soldiers, they are the big, tough, gun-wielding kind of warriors of Starfinder, and I mean tough because they are a constitution-based martial class with 10 HP per level. They start off trained in all simple and martial weapons, all armors, and reflex saves, and they are expert in will and fortitude. Now, interestingly, soldiers get up to master in weapons, but they get up to legendary training in both their armor and their class DCs. This is because a lot of soldier abilities rely on saving throws because they are expected to make area effect attacks like automatic fire or area fire activities, both of which are 2 action activities that you can do with certain weapons. Soldiers have 4 major abilities going for them: suppressive fire, primary target, walking armory, and fighting style. The last one is their subclass. Suppressive fire is easy. When you make an area effect attack with a weapon, either by using auto fire or the area fire activity, anyone who fails a saving throw is also suppressed. Suppressed is a condition that gives creatures a -1 to hit and a 10-foot penalty to speed for a round. Primary target is a bit wonky. When you fire off an area effect attack with your weapon, you can, as a free action, fire off another shot. This second shot only hits the person closest to the center of your area attack and is a normal ranged attack, not an area saving throw thing. Now, the area effect attack has the attack trait, so this second shot has the multiple attack penalty, but it doesn't add the multiple attack penalty to subsequent shots. So you can fire off your machine gun, hit everyone, then get a free shot only against the guy at the center, and then for your third action, you can shoot the guy at the center again, still at -5. Walking Armory just lets you satisfy your armor's strength requirement with your constitution score instead. It also lets you increase your carrying capacity by half your constitution score. Like I said, fighting styles are the subclasses, and they are pretty cool. Action Hero is my favorite for flavor alone. It's the one where you go crazy with machine guns. It increases the range of your automatic fire area effects and lets you choose the primary target to be anyone in the area, not just the guy closest to the center. Armor Storm involves using the bulk of your armor to your advantage. You can hide in your armor and not count yourself as being in your own area of effect attacks. Also, you gain resistance to all damage against suppressed targets, and you can do certain combat maneuvers even if you don't have a free hand by just shoving people around with your armor. Bombard is like the opposite of the Action Hero. You are very careful in your area effect attacks. You can choose not to include friendlies in your area effect attacks, and enemies are suppressed even if they save, but they aren't suppressed if they critically save. Close Combat is, well, the Close Combat Soldier. They gain the Punitive Strike, which is like the Reactive Strike, except critical hits disrupt movement, not manipulate actions, and they can suppress people they hit with 2-handed melee weapons. Important note, there is a level 1 soldier feat called Whirling Swipe, and that lets you area of effect attack with a melee weapon, so you can still do the suppressive fire primary target stuff. Erudite Warrior is a cool idea, though maybe that's just me. I'm always a sucker for the warrior poet type. They gain a free skill that gets skill increases as they level up for free, and they have a single action activity that they can just suppress someone no roll. But that suppression goes away if the enemy attacks you. It is a decent taunt, I guess, but it might be the weakest of the fighting styles. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I think the soldier might be very slightly overtuned. The ability to fire off 3 shots, the area effect attack, the primary target, and then the follow-up shot with a saving throw and then 2 shots at -5 is really strong. That on top of legendary armor and class DCs might need to be toned down just a skosh, maybe take away their legendary armor proficiency, I don't know. The last class is witchwarper. They are the class that has somehow been unmoored from reality, which gives them access to strange abilities in the form of spells. They are an intelligence-based, spontaneous spellcaster with 8 HP per level. They start with simple weapon and light armor training, and I think they're supposed to get up to expert in both, but the feature giving them expert weapon training isn't in the playtest. That may be a typo, I don't know. Like most other spellcasters, they are expert in will, trained in fortitude and reflex, and perception. And, like mystics, they get up to 4 spells per spell rank. In addition to their spellcasting, witchwarpers have 3 big things: their anchor, their quantum field, and their paradox is their subclass. But, like the mystic, all of these things are kinda tied together. Their quantum field is the easiest to explain. They can, as a single action, put out an area that is a 15-foot burst within 100 feet. What this area does depends on the witchwarper's paradox. It is a sustained effect though, so you have to spend an action every round keeping it up, but there are ways to mitigate that. There are 2 keywords associated with your quantum field. The first is the zone trait, which just means that the effects take place within your quantum field and only within it. Also, you can only have 1 zone effect active at any given time. The anchoring trait means that you can only use this ability or spell when the quantum field is active, but also it automatically sustains your quantum field for free. The anchor is the mini subclass. Basically, your character has something that keeps them anchored to this reality. It's either a strong set of memories, a strong connection to an idea or hobby, or a physical object. They each give you a small benefit, such as a skill feat, and also you can take a special action with them to reduce certain status conditions. That special action also sustains your quantum field. The paradox is a big deal with the witchwarper, and it's how you are unmoored from reality. Each paradox determines your spellcasting tradition, gives you training in a skill, grants you some free spells, some focus spells, and determines what your quantum field does. All the witchwarper's focus spells have the anchoring trait, by the way, which means that their field has to be active to cast it, but casting it automatically sustains their field. Also, I will say, again, like the mystic, the skill it grants isn't necessarily your tradition skill, so it's possible to say, have an arcane spellcaster without the arcane skill. Analyst is the paradox where you see the underlying source code of the universe, like Neo from the Matrix. It's an arcane tradition that grants you computers. Their quantum field benefit is when they recall knowledge on something within their quantum field, they actually get to recall knowledge against 2 things in their field. Also, when you sustain the field, you get to recall knowledge for free. Anomaly is the paradox where you are from or can see into other realities, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. The tradition is arcane and the skill is deception. Their quantum field ability is pretty wild. Anyone within the field that attempts a concentrate action has a 20% chance to have their action disrupted. The gap paradox involves the gaps, surprise surprise, and it is an occult tradition that has the society skill. For their quantum field, you are concealed to all enemies within your quantum field, but if they hit you despite concealment, you lose concealment against that enemy until the start of your next turn. Precog is the last paradox, and it involves some sort of time shenanigans. They are an occult spellcaster with the piloting skill for some reason. Your quantum field slows enemies who start their move actions inside the quantum field by 5 feet and similarly speeds up allies by 5 feet. My thoughts on the witchwarper are largely the same as the mystic. I think their class features are roughly on par with the sorcerer's blood magic, and they get the same number of spells per spell rank, and they start with light armor proficiency and 8 HP per level. I think bringing them down a hair so that the sorcerer isn't overshadowed would probably be called for. Whew, that was a long one. I'll be interested to see how long it ends up being. The script for this one ended up being 12 pages long. Anyway, that's it for the Starfinder 2nd Edition playtest classes. I know I have some opinions that may be unpopular, and you're free to disagree. Just please remember to be civil in the comments below. Remember, there's someone on the other end of that computer screen. And while you're down there in the comments, make sure you like and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!